This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 483 for the week of July 26th, 2020. Hey there, welcome back to Kanzenshuu,
the podcast,
an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site.
Kanzenshuu.
Yes, we cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening a little bit of entertaining. Well, hello, sir. That's Heath.
It is I. I have returned.
From where?
Well, I haven't really left my house, so I guess I haven't really returned. I returned to the airwaves, but
that's good.
In a physical manifestation, I have not left.
Oh, that's Heath. I am Mike. You may see him, Hujio. You may see me, Fuchito EX, back at you with the next podcast episode here. I've actually already recorded 3 entirely different segments. They're all recorded. They are all edited. They are all ready to go. So you're the one holding me up.
Hey, I gave you options, and you're like, hey, let's do it on Monday. I was like, okay.
It's fine.
So it's all your fault that it's my fault.
What are we doing this episode? Well, we're going to do one of those wiki editor check-ins where we talk with some of the folks who are working on our constantly in progress Kanzenshuu wiki about some of the things, not just some of the things they're working on, but some of the things they've learned, some of the things we've all collectively learned, new discoveries, that kind of stuff. And I think the 3 conversations here really run the gamut of talking about pure history, pure documentation, kind of even the history of documentation. Then we're going to get into legitimate new discoveries and unearthings through hacking away at things. And then we're also just going to talk fun, just like, the nuts and bolts of what goes into working on a page and some of the cool things you notice when you change your approach from simply watching to watching for documentation, which is certainly something you and I have talked about on the show in the past, but it's nice to kind of tune that to old material as opposed to new material.
Yes. And to be fair, you say always in progress wiki. I would caveat that with this is the most in progress the wiki has ever been. So it is very nice to see the amount of progress that everybody has, made so far.
Yeah. So you and I, we're setting up the show right now. We're going to transition over to those topics. And then we're going to come back and you and I are going to talk about some of our own site and wiki work and stuff going on and future teases and all that jazz. So I guess without any further ado, who do we have on the show?
Who wants to listen to us just talk?
They're not here for us.
No one. They're not here for me.
First up, we're going to talk with Terez about Viz Manga, the history of Viz Manga releases and documenting those. And then she's turned her attention over to cataloging Shinsuke Kikuchi's music throughout the entirety of the Dragon Ball series. So we'll chat all that stuff up.
God bless her soul.
Next up, we're going to talk with Jay. You may see him around his PSP talking about Budokai 1 a little more, but some real fun discoveries he's made. Just hacking the hell out of that game. Hacking it apart, ripping it to shreds. What can we find lurking under the surface that was effectively done, maybe? And then rounding things up, third in line, Joe, JRP. We're going to talk the Afterlife Tournament. Not really a review of the arc, although he certainly gives his impressions, but fun details, things he noticed in the background. You got to cross-reference something, you got to write down a name, like, wait a minute, none of this makes any sense. So we're going to chat that out. And then on the flip side, Heath, you and I, we're going to come back around, talk about all of our own BS. So again, let's get on into it. That order right there, right now. Let's go. First in line for our, I call it like a wiki editor check-in, but it's more than that because we're not just talking about what we're all working on, but we're also sharing new information and things we learn, all that good stuff. Terez, welcome back. It's been a few episodes since you've been on here. Great to have you.
Good to be back.
So I'm going to spoil things. You're worried about people thinking you're a little schizophrenic on what you work on. I say that's not a concern because anyone who listens to the show knows that Heath, Julian, Jake, myself, we all have always worked on a million things at once, and we're distracted by a bird that flies by, and we move on to something else from what we're previously working on. But you have a couple things that you have been working on, wanting to work on, got distracted to work on for the wiki. I think there's good information in there, good history. I would love to hear about some of this stuff. One of them is kind of a continuation on something you've talked about previously on the show, and that's your music cataloging. And another is something from ye olden days, the history of the Viz manga release. I'd like to talk a little bit about both with you today. Is there one you would prefer to start with?
I guess let's start with the Viz.
Okay.
It's been a month since I was working on it, but yeah, that's probably a good place to start.
So I know we have a manga guide on Kanzenshuu, but it's really focused on the original Japanese version. And we've had a DVD guide and obviously Blu-ray as well that does focus on the North American market in addition to the Japanese market. But for the manga, there really hasn't been a central resource. And we've certainly had threads on our forum over the years, documented things like the 3-in-1s, like the Viz Bigs. We really wanted to take everything kind of back to the beginning. And you decided, well, I'm just going to buy everything, acquire everything, all versions of everything. Let's do this.
Yeah, and it's like impossible really to get. I mean, not impossible. I would have to have a lot more money than I have to get every version of everything, because some things are different between print editions. Like even the same edition, like different printings of that edition will have different levels of censorship.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I have a 2019 version, I think, of volume 1 of the Dragon Ball manga. And it's like printing number, I don't know, it was a really high number. And I would have to buy every single one of those to really have everything.
Yeah.
You know?
People have this question, and I feel like we've run into this, where someone's saying, well, I'm looking at volume 9 of the red graphic novel version of Dragon Ball, and mine says this and shows this. And someone else is saying, I have that exact same thing, and mine says and shows something completely different. And yeah, that actually is a problem, an issue here.
And I even discovered that the digital graphic novels that you can get through Amazon, the Kindle version, are different from the Viz graphic novels that you can buy directly from Viz on their website.
Oh, man.
They have different levels of censorship. And then that's different from the digital chapters that you can get on the website.
Oh, my goodness. Like, there is no central, like, this is our digital version. It's actually whatever someone pulled out of a hard drive that one day to provide to that one service. That's what went up.
Right.
Man.
And, we're seeing similar problems with that now with Super, because the simulpub chapters are different from the graphic novel versions they put out later.
Yeah, and even within that, there are occasionally typos, or I think back to that one, the Legendary Super Saiyan that was changed to Legendary Saiyan. That was done during the original simulpub, and that is different from the final release as well. Yeah, and that's just tech stuff. That's in addition to Viz redraws all the sound effects for the final collected edition. There's so many differences here.
Yeah, I did a breakdown of all of it for chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I started with the censorship and other types of edits. And it's just unreal how many different versions of everything there can be. Different levels of censorship, even with the visual edits that they did.
Well, the question always is, all right, what version do I buy? And I feel like we're discovering more and more, you can't even recommend a version because you don't know what they're going to get.
Yeah, I think lately it's probably better just to tell people to get either the big Viz Bigs, and the advantage of those is the color pages and the nice paper.
Right.
That's what I normally tell people to get, because the censorship is just not as big a deal to me as the color pages. That's just me.
Yeah.
And the nice paper is good too. But, if they're really worried about censorship, then you tell them to get the 3-in-1 version. But neither of those are, representative of anything that was sold in Japan.
Right.
They're Viz-only editions, omnibus editions. Yeah, there's no perfect solution. I wish they had just done the Kanzenban.
Yep, that's what we all wanted. Well, we all still hope for
it. One day.
One day, indeed. So I guess go back to the wiki a little bit. So you said you started with chapter 1, and we're literally starting with chapter 1, going back to 1998. Was it March 1998 with the original monthly floppies? You ended up buying all of those too, right?
Yeah, well, that was actually the main focus of my project there, was documenting all the floppies, because those have been out of print for a long time. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know anything about.
Right.
So I'm real excited about documenting that and showing which chapters in it, what the censorship was like in those. And the reader letters are also really interesting. The covers are nice. There's only, usually just 2, maybe 3 or more chapters in these floppies. So you get a different Toriyama illustration on each one. So those are really nice looking.
So I know we have a page for, because I started it, the monthly floppies, and you really just took over from there and you built that out. And I feel like that's a real good base. We're probably going to have similar pages for like the graphic novel versions, the 3-in-1s, the Viz Bigs. But for right now, you've gone back and you're doing it back to the page for chapter 1 in the wiki, and you documented the different types of, whether it's the self-censorship or the text changes or those kinds of things. So is that, I mean, we always talk about, we want to set a baseline for what a page should be. And I feel like that's another part of that for a chapter page, probably.
Yeah, and I'm always telling myself, well, now I'm going to go to the next chapter, and then I end up doing something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was making pages. The bulk of my work was making pages for the floppies, each individual issue.
Right. Okay.
And setting those up, and then adding them to the table where you can see all of them in one run. I don't know if that is documented anywhere on the internet. I looked for it and I didn't find anything. So
no, not a whole lot. I mean, we had that old manga reference guide that was just text in old HTML tables that Julian did on Kanzenshuu EX, and I know you used it a little bit. I don't know how necessarily complete or even accurate some of it was. I mean, it's hard for us to go back and look at something that we did so many years ago and like, all right, what was the thought process? Why did we arrange it this way? I feel like I'm having that problem with a lot of stuff where it's like, well, this page that you were asking me about CDs the other day, and you're like, well, I don't see it listed on this page. Like, well, it's on the miscellaneous page because for this reason, and well, that made sense in 2002, but here in 2020, I don't even know how to categorize some of this stuff.
Right, yeah, it can be a little bit difficult on the site, especially if you don't know a whole lot about what you're looking for.
Right, yeah.
Then you're not going to know where to find it. So that's one thing that the wiki is good for. You can
just search,
cross-reference everything with internal links.
Yeah.
It's all very straightforward. How to find stuff.
So let's go over to music documentation. You've talked in the past about setting up the Sumitomo catalog, and every episode is going to have a breakdown of what music is played in that episode, catalog numbers where we know them, titles when we know them. Each piece is going to have its own page showing all the episodes it's used in. You have turned your attention back to the one and only Mr. Shunsuke Kikuchi, and the Kikuchi catalog has begun.
That's right. And fortunately, Kanzenshuu already did, the big bulk of the documentation work. And so basically what I'm doing is going through and making sure everything is correct and applying the sequential catalog numbers that we were using for Sumitomo to Kikuchi. And I'm already up to like 80 unique tracks, and I'm like 8 episodes in, which I guess isn't surprising.
Right.
It's a lot. I started on that because we have a community rewatch coming up on our new subreddit, our Dragon Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe said that he was inspired by that to try to follow along with it and do all of his work for the episode pages related to it while it's ongoing. So I decided that I would do that too, and that brought me to Kikuchi.
Like you start up all these other projects that light a fire under your ass to go do something else, and I just love how one project begets another project here.
So I've been wanting to do Kikuchi for a while. I started it a while back, probably about 6 months ago, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit a snag, like I wasn't sure how to deal with things that might be stock music.
Right.
Obviously don't want to put those in the Kikuchi catalog because they're probably not him. So after I thought about it for a few months, I decided I was comfortable going forward with it, and I'm just going to separate the ones out into uncertain authorship category and keep that completely separate from the Kikuchi catalog. And I'm probably going to do something similar with Sumitomo because I've come across a few tracks in Super and other stuff that I'm not quite sure about with him.
And what are those things? Are they things like something plays on a radio, or it's a little television ditty, just like something that's clearly not a real composition for the show?
Exactly. For example, in episode 2, when Goku goes inside the capsule house for the first time and turns on the TV, there are 2 separate tracks that play, one on one channel, and then he changes the channel and there's another one. And those are probably not Kikuchi.
Right.
So I'm going to keep those out of the catalog. They're going to be on the music table, but they'll have like separate catalog numbers with a U instead of a K, just to make sure that we're clear that they're different things.
So it's been a while since we talked about this, and maybe there's new listeners don't know what we're talking about. Just kind of give me the basics on this kind of music catalog. What are you basing it on? What else is out there? And what's the approach for it? Because I just find this utterly fascinating. It's so cool to me.
It's based on catalogs like the Kerschel catalog from Mozart, which is also K numbers. Like a composer will give their own catalog numbers to stuff a lot of the time, and they're usually opus numbers.
Right, okay.
But, after they die, you're always finding all of these works that they never published, stuff like that. And maybe they have like 3 unpublished minuets in G minor, and how do you differentiate between these 3 minuets in G minor? You have to give it a catalog number. And usually what they try to do is they go back to when the composer was born and start from there. In the first piece, they give it the number 1, and the next piece, they give it the number 2. And that can be really, really subjective. And with this, it's not. It's really easy because I'm just dealing with their Dragon Ball compositions. And, they very objectively premiered in a certain order in the show or in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So all I have to do is number them by the order that they appeared. And if we get to the point where an OST is released and some tracks on it were not used in the show, I can just tack those onto the end of the catalog. And then I usually move on to a new prefix, kind of like the M numbers. Have shifting prefixes. You don't necessarily go from 200 to 299. You just go through the 200s until you get to the end, which might, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like 244 or something. I don't know. And then you skip to 300. So I'm going to try to keep consistent with the M number prefixes so you can, keep the same idea about where those prefixes were used.
Got it.
But the numbers aren't going to be the same because mine is sequential.
I mean, you're mentioning these M numbers. There actually is a catalog for Kikuchi. We just don't know all of them, right?
That's right. Sometimes they tell us in the liner notes what their internal catalog numbers were.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bunch of the official catalog numbers. I think for everything that was published, released on an album, we have catalog numbers for most of those.
Right, and the music releases have always been a thorn in our side, where not all of the music from a movie will be released alongside the rest of the movie music, and then something will come out later that'll have more but less at the same time. We still don't get everything. I'm real curious. I knew this at one point in time. I feel like there's not any music released that was unused, but there's certainly plenty of unreleased music. And there's also probably stuff that was composed for a movie, but went unused in that movie itself that it was composed for, but did end up getting used in the TV series. So that's sure going to be fun. Yeah, well, there are tracks that end up on OST releases that were never used. I know for certain there are with Sumitomo, and the Super stuff, but I was reading through Kanzenshoo's forum thread, the one that you linked for me last night, and I saw a mention of a couple of other ones that were
never used.
Man, I'm impressed and appreciative of all the stuff that folks have done. Kanzenshuu, Kenneth, I mean, this has just been one of his babies for many, many years. And I so appreciate his blessing for us to use this as the basis and incorporate it into the site. And I love all the stuff that you're doing. So just with all that in mind, one more time, what can people expect to see on a wiki page that will then link to what? Like, what's an episode page going to have? What's a catalog page going to have?
Yeah, well, okay, for the music stuff, the pages that I have to deal with are, number one, the catalog itself, which has everything on it with a sequential numbering. And it'll show you which episode it debuted in, the tonality of the piece, and the releases that it's available on. And then there's the episode pages that break down scene by scene where each thing appears. And then there are release pages that show you all the track listing. We're going to try to get some liner notes translated, hopefully, maybe. And like the suites that are on the Kikuchi soundtrack releases.
Yeah.
Like each track would be a suite of, 3 to 5 different distinct pieces. So I'm going to go down and break through those on the release pages. And then there are the individual track pages where I'll break down what we know about the track, do a little section on Kanzenshuu and whatever he called it, because he gave his titles to everything. And compositional analysis, like we talked about before with Sumitomo. And then a table that'll have every scene in the series where that track was used.
It's like, oh, we're just going to have all these things, and it sounds so easy.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's really impressive, though. I mean, it's beautiful. It's informative. I just love it. This is the kind of stuff that people ask for, too, and they really want to know. We still see so often, despite the fact that Kanzenshuu site exists, and people are like, what song was played in this scene? And we're never going to be at a point. I mean, my pie in the sky is that sometime down the road, maybe not in our lifetimes, someone will just say, oh, here's the page on Kanzenshuu for it. I feel like we have a lot of that now, and eventually I would love to have even more of that, because I'm truly of the belief that if you want a piece of information, if you want an answer to a question, text is the best way to get that. It's something you can quickly glance through.
Yeah, and come back to easy.
Yeah.
And search through.
Yeah. I mean, Control F is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. But, so many people these days are not. They just want to watch a YouTube video.
Yeah, I don't get that. I'm rebelling against it. I really feel like this is the best way.
I wouldn't say that I'm rebelling against it necessarily, but I definitely don't get it. But yeah, anyway, the one thing that I'm obsessing about that other people might not care about so much is the sequential catalog numbers. Because, people hate using numbers. They always want a title.
Yeah, what's the name of this song? I'm like, well, it's right, M146. It's a title that,
yeah, even if somebody just made up the title, they don't care. They want words to call it by. So yeah, I'm obsessing about the sequential catalog numbering, and hopefully there'll be like 2 or 3 people out there who will appreciate that, because they've, maybe worked with classical music like I have.
Exactly.
And they're used to it, and they want that kind of thing, that kind of objective classification. But yeah, I think most people aren't going to care about that, and that's the most stressful part, because if I screw something up, like if I assign something the wrong catalog number, if I missed a track or something like that, then it screws up everything up the chain, and I have to totally redo it.
Well, I mean, that makes me wonder. So there's so much music in Dragon Ball, and obviously you've seen it before. You know them, you listen to the music. But what is that process like when you're on episode 8 and you're like, did I hear this piece before? Like, what are you doing? Are you going back and you just double click in MP3s just to double check things?
Yeah. Well, I have recorded, my documentation from earlier episodes, so I can just look at that. And that helps. And then if I don't remember what it sounds like, then yeah, I've got, everything in files. I can just click and make sure it's the same thing.
I can only barely wrap my head around this. This is why I'm in awe of it. I love it.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Sometimes it gets a little bit tricky because there might be two distinct tracks that are really similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is one of the errors that I caught on Kanzenshoo's page, but apparently people have known about it for years, but he just never bothered to fix it on the page, which I understand because I have projects from years ago and other fandoms that I have also abandoned. So I understand how this stuff goes. But anyway, it's a Kikuchi track that plays when the Dragon Balls are out.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least there's a sound that's almost like a sound effect. But it's definitely Kikuchi because in a couple of distinct tracks it resolves into actual music. So we know it's his.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there's like 3 distinct ones, and Kanzenshuu only cataloged 2 distinct ones. So where there were 2 tracks before, now there are 3. And one of them, like, he categorized, or he marked it down in episode 1 in the wrong place. And that place where he marked it down in episode 1 in the wrong place was a sound effect. But every other time after that where he marked it, it was the actual Kikuchi sound. So, yeah. I started out and I was going somewhere with that and I don't remember where it was.
It's all right. I actually think that's really important to have someone who's done a first pass and then to have someone else come in with kind of like equal authority and knowledge and do another pass on it and double check that and fact check that. Right. I think that gets you a better product in the long term. And that's something I really like about Kanzenshuu, where we all double check or reread someone else's thing, even if it's just proofreading. I mean, I caught, I was missing an N at the end of Funimation on the 1994 Curse of the Blood Rubies feature the other day. I'm like, God damn it, how many of us have read this feature? How many times? But even just something simple like that. So you can imagine that on a project of this scale, how important it is to have multiple sets of eyes on it.
Yeah, and I kind of did that with Sumitomo because T. Hallam started it.
Yeah.
And he did about 40 episodes, I think, 45 or 50 maybe. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, so I was able to go back through and catch the errors that he had made. But then I went and did the rest of it myself. And of course I made my own errors and I have to go back and catch those myself.
Sure.
You know, because I don't have anybody else to check up on them for me. So yeah, that was a process. And I imagine it will still be a process whenever I get back to finishing Sumitomo.
All right. Well, then let's, I love all these updates. This is good stuff. I will ask the question I ask everyone every time. What's something else that someone else is working on that you found interesting, that you didn't know before? What's cool? What's going on?
You know, I haven't really been paying attention lately.
You're not spying?
I've been distracted by Reddit stuff.
Sure.
And
I get it.
I took like a month off, and I think when I take time off, then everybody else quits too. Except for Joe, but I'm not really going through his stuff. I actually went through his page for Mystical Adventure.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to add, at least as far as I've gotten, which is episode 8, all of the Kikuchi tracks that are arrangements or references to Mystical Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So he had just started that, and he made a section for the lyrics, and he's going to do another one for the animation and the references in that. So I added a bit to his lyric section, and then added my little table with the Kikuchi references.
Nice. So the Mystical Adventure page. That's a good one. Terez, thank you very much for all this stuff. You want to give one more plug for the R Dragon Ball? It's a separate subreddit that some of you folks have set up.
Well, that was what I was distracted by for a month. We just opened a new subreddit for discussions only. And the reason why we did that is because people have been complaining for years.
People, in quotes. People. Some unnamed people.
Yeah, on RDBZ about all the pictures. I'm not talking about you.
You should be.
No, because you have said before, and maybe you were being sarcastic, but I took you totally seriously. You were like, I love it when somebody posts a picture of something they bought that's Dragon Ball. That just makes me so happy. Well, maybe you were being sarcastic.
Well, I mean, it depends on the phase of the moon that day, I feel.
I guess. So anyway, people have been complaining about all the image posts on RDBZ for years because they get upvoted more than anything else. We have 300,000 subscribers on RDBZ, and they just upvote pictures that they like, that they think are pretty or whatever,
Yeah.
And it kind of drowns out any possibility of discussion about lore and nerdy stuff that we like. So we acquired our Dragon Ball a couple of years ago, and we just been kind of sitting on it. It's been a redirect to RDBZ all that time. And we didn't really know if there was any point in opening it as a separate subreddit. But finally, we just decided that was the best solution to the problem of people who wanted a discussion subreddit. So that's what it is.
All right. I got to say, I am not one for hanging out in communities other than my own, but I have always been extremely impressed by the stuff that y'all do on the subreddit. I mean, it's always clean. I don't know what I don't know, which is who knows. I mean, you all know what it is that doesn't get there, what is removed, but it feels very clean and organized and not draconian in any kind of sense either. It just feels natural and well maintained, and I just appreciate that. So I occasionally hang out and post there too. So
yes, you do.
Be on the lookout, I guess. All right, very cool, Terez. Thank you much for all that stuff and the extra plugs. And I guess let's all get back to work. Or I don't know. Let's take a nap and then we'll go back to work.
Yeah, I think I need a nap.
All right. Thank you much.
See you later.
I am happy to welcome back to the show one of our highly esteemed wiki editors, Jay. You may see him around as PSP. Welcome back, man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back for the second time.
So you have been plugging away at video game stuff kind of nonstop. I love everything you're working on. You kind of like move between projects. You're working on console stuff. You're working on some of the long lost mobile gaming that I definitely want to talk about in the future. But let's take it back to console stuff, because your documentation of and discoveries in and tinkering with the original Dragon Ball Z Budokai, the PS2 and GameCube release of that game, has really been fascinating to me, because you've made things work that shouldn't work and otherwise were never expected to be in the game. I know last time you were on the show, we talked about some of the hidden characters in the background, and that's really neat and that's interesting. But this is kind of like gameplay and development related. Give me the background on the two characters that you made playable that are not playable.
Right. So in the game, so the Cybermen and Cell Jr. are, characters that you fight in the game. So they have movesets when you fight them in the game, but you're not actually able to choose them, when you're the character select. And that made me kind of confused because, why would they put this much effort into characters that have full movesets, animations, and so forth? I just kind of assumed that they would have been playable at some point, just for pure development purposes. And so I kind of went down into researching, I guess, what happened to these characters, why were they removed? And as I was going through the game's files, the textures and such that are in there, I found text that basically said that, at one point they had skill capsules that you would be able to enable in the game's like skill capsule store. And so from that point, I was like, okay, it seems pretty possible that I can get these characters running. And so I spent a weekend getting these characters basically able for the player to, move around, punch and fight and use with their actual controller. The first time around, I was able to enable them, but I realized that they had no skills equipped. And when I talked to some of the other, hackers in the Budokai scene, which, I was surprised, there's quite a few. It was something that they had, it was a known thing that people ran into. And so I went deeper into looking at the game's runtime memory. So what's going on as the game is running, and tried to find a way to, equip the skills programmatically. And so after some time, I was able to equip the skills to these characters, and, now they're fully playable. So they can use, all their special moves. They can grab now. They can use their ultimate attacks. And that was a really thrilling experience, I guess, to take something that was pretty much taken out of the game and restore it.
So looking at those characters, I think back to, God, what was it? Mortal Kombat 9, maybe. I feel like the recent NetherRealm Mortal Kombat games, they have a lot of characters that appear in story mode that either are in the background, you may even fight against them once. Was it Mortal Kombat 9? No, it couldn't have been 9. Because Baraka's in that, or Mortal Kombat 10, where maybe you fight against Baraka, but he's not actually a playable character. And there's a lot of stuff like, well, he wasn't truly balanced to be in the roster along the other characters. And I think of something like Sabai Cell Jr. in this first game here, where you just fight against them in story mode. Maybe they weren't really developed to be competitive alongside all the other characters, but at the same time, it's not like Budokai is the most balanced game in the universe. It was their first real foray back into this world after many years off from it. And it was a new team. It was Dimps working on it compared to Tosei and other Bandai teams in the past. So as you're just tinkering around with it, seeing that it seemed like they probably were intended to be playable, and indeed they were later on in subsequent entries.
Yeah, and this wasn't just Budokai 1 that did this.
Yeah,
Budokai 2 also took the Cell Juniors and the Cybermen out, even though you fight against them. And they can be restored in similar ways, even though I haven't gotten to doing that.
Just tinkering with them, why do you think it was? Was it just that balance thing? Was it just, they're whatever, let's just not include them? Was there no space on the character select screen? What do you think it was?
Honestly, I thought it might just be the character select screen just to wrap it around. And interestingly, they have so the portraits in the Fighter Select, they have a unique art style. There's a portrait for the Cell Jr. That's used in The Legend of Mr. Satan.
Okay, yeah.
I kind of question that. And even in the tournament, because they have voice clips for the Cybermen and the Cell Jr. So I kind of wonder at what point did they decide they didn't want them in the game.
Yeah, I really think back to the PS2 development era. I mean, it was updates. I mean, you couldn't put out a game and then give it an update or wrap something up. I hate to bring it back to Mortal Kombat again, but I think of Mortal Kombat 9. I think when it shipped, Scarlet was mostly finished on disc, not entirely complete. There were obviously plans for DLC. And we know, looking at, I don't want to say I pioneered this kind of thing, but I really dug into the audio files on the PS2 games years and years ago when they were first coming out. And that's when, I first heard about the alternate Dragon World scenarios that were never finished and included in Budokai 3. Then we went back and looked at some of the prior games. There was just so much stuff, and you really do have to think about, all right, this game was done, and then the next one was supposed to be done for the next year. So at what point did they conceive this and then just had to cut their losses and say, nope, all right, dummy it out, we're not going to include it? And for something like these two characters, it seemed like they were real close to being able to just enable it almost. If the fact that you were able to do it on a commercial compiled product, of course you're using some tools, maybe we can talk about that, says to me they were basically ready.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's I run into issue with when using the Cyberman and Cell Jr. is alternate skins and enabling them in the tournament. Yeah, they're really close.
Tell me about some of the tools you're using. Obviously, this is being done, you're talking about looking at the RAM, the memory. There's emulation tools that you're using. Beyond a raw emulator itself, what are you using? What are you looking at? What are you doing to manipulate the code and the memory?
Right, so actually I'm just going straight through the emulator. So PCSX2, they do have functionality for codes between Action Replay and Codebreaker. Sure. And I use that initially for just getting the Cell Jr. and Cybermen to unlock them. And through this method, they didn't have any skills. And so in order to get the skills, I had to look through the memory and create my own. I can't remember if I made my own Action Replay code or Codebreaker code.
Got it.
So it's nothing too crazy. Now, in terms of getting ripping the textures, I know there's tools out there that other hackers or modders use for Budokai. I was just using OpenGL Intercept. to grab it. Yeah.
Looking at the game now in its final state, and then seeing what people have done with these games over the years, particularly the third one, where I feel like people really got stuff working in there. What's almost like what's possible with the game? Would you be able to swap in entirely different characters even into the first game there?
Oh, definitely. You can switch around textures, models. I think the only thing you're pretty much prevented from doing is, changing cutscenes, I guess. Yeah. On my Twitter, I had posted me changing up the title screen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I joked about doing the same for Dragon Ball Evolution on the PSP. Basically just transforming that back into Shin Budokai. So yeah, I have a lot of fun, working with these games.
Is there anything else in the first game? Again, we talked about some of the hidden background characters. These two, I feel like we're pretty close on that wiki page. Of course, we've been saying that for months, but then you discover something new, someone else discovers something new. We want to translate something. It's a never-ending process. Is there anything else from Budokai 1 that you just found fascinating or didn't know as you were tinkering with it?
Well, first there's that unused fighter select screen, which seems to be from like early in development. I think you pointed out that instead of like the capsule system, there was like it said deck at the bottom. So yeah, it seemed like at first they're going for a deck system and then replace it with capsules just to, keep with the Dragon Ball theme.
And that's funny because apparently they got that far in toying with that idea that they made an entire graphic for it. Obviously, nothing beyond that you can see, but it was left over. Oh, speaking of leftover, there's is it title card things?
Yeah. So they had the next episode previews, I think, from the actual anime. It was just from one episode, but they used it as reference. They had a little annotated text at the top saying, use this for the Namek arc and use this for the artificial human arc. And so I thought that was interesting. There was also like the dragon, I guess, image. It basically looked like they storyboarded out the next episode preview using, stuff from the actual anime, which really just shows how much effort, they made towards recreating the actual anime experience.
Yeah, I mean, they were literally saving JPEGs, so to speak, of certain things they wanted to reference. Yeah, they were really trying to stay true to the tone, the spirit. You hear that in Yamamoto's score. You see that in the graphics that were developed there. It's a true labor of love that they did on that game, even though it was development hell, as we've read in some of the interviews. And the way they got to what they got to eventually, I guess it was good that they got there, but they weren't ready for that next generation of consoles, and it sounds like they have that issue every time there's a new generation of consoles. They're just not prepared for it. So I ask this question of every other wiki editor when they come on, and hopefully by now everyone's starting to get prepared for it. But what is something that someone else is working on that you've seen, that you found that was either interesting, cool, you didn't know before, or you're just in awe of that they did that?
Definitely the Yardratian names. I was talking to Ken, and he had found basically from Dragon Ball Z sagas.
Right.
Yeah, the name for Soba's henchman, which is never mentioned in the games, but it's found in the game's files. Yakisoba, I guess. So I found that interesting, and I helped pull out, portrait.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, of Yaki for him, for the page. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in that. I know there's work being done in Dragon Ball Online and getting information on the Yardrats. So that's really interesting stuff. Also, just Ken's technique guide in general that he's working on.
Yeah, I always felt like Soba was Baby's first name pun, and then the fact that it's actually Yakisoba kind of drives that home even more. Like, they just chose the first food item they could think of to try and make a Japanese name pun. It's a little embarrassing, but it is what it is. But again, I think that's a great example of some teamwork going on where, I had a base page of Soba and Ken's working on the Yardratians, and it's like, why the hell does this page exist? Oh, okay. And then works on it some more. And then, we dig around and find that, oh, okay, there's something in the files, and you're able to help pull out textures and portraits and text and all that jazz. That just makes me smile every time I see something like that happen.
Yeah, it's a really fun environment, just look into Dragon Ball.
Cool. Well, thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do. We'll have you back on again. Like I said, we'll talk about some maybe mobile game stuff in the future. Twitter, where do you want to send people?
Basically go to my Twitter. It's Golden PSP. The handle is PSPIQ3. There I post pretty much what I'm currently looking at in terms of games or just anything. So, yeah, give me a look.
Good deal. All right. We will chat with you again soon. Thank you much.
All right. See you soon.
Been a little bit, but joining me for a wiki check-in, Joe, JRP, you may see him around. Hello, welcome back, man.
Oh, hello. I'm glad to be back. So this is like number 3 on my little checkbox. So when I get 10, do I get like a coffee or something?
Yes, you get a free podcast, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I'll keep working on that.
How are things going, man? It's been, I asked that and the world's on fucking fire, but I mean, otherwise, how you doing?
Oh, it's all the same. Had to take a kind of a prolonged break for a while as things got a little bit crazy. But now that things are progressively differently crazy, I don't think anyone is claiming we're back to normal in any stretch of the imagination. Found that we can come back to it, and it's down to a point where working on something like this and just enjoying something light, right, is actually a great feeling, right? And, for a while it was hard. It's like, why am I watching an anime when the world is going crazy? But now it's okay. Now we can sit back and say, oh, that's why I'm doing it, because it is to keep me sane and hopefully to keep others sane as we all iterate over whatever's going on and just try to come out better on the other side.
I was going to say, I mean, this is the kind of thing, I know the way you work, it's similar to the way I work, where it's a distraction, but it's not. It's also this personal sanity check. I don't really know how to describe it.
Well, there's just something vaguely cathartic about digging in deep to something and really learning it, understanding it, kind of feeling it, seeing the seams, seeing where it's good, seeing where it's bad. And that really gets to me in all of my projects, and it's what I've been trying to bring to this project as well. And being able to do that, even when everything else is going on around us, feels good to me, and that has helped me stay centered as we get through the last couple of months. But it was rough for a while, and I know everyone out there is kind of experiencing the last couple of months differently. And I'm glad to be back and, just doing stuff on the wiki for a while. That feels good.
Let's talk about a little bit of it. You're like me, you jump all over the place. You have some of your own pet projects, and then you're doing episodes, but also, I guess, tournaments, kind of like things as a whole, collective parts of some of the episodes that you're going through and doing. You do a synopsis for something, then you'll add, just getting a little specific here, you were doing the Afterlife Tournament. You were doing episode summaries for those, and then the Afterlife Tournament, the Yoichi Budokai, as a whole. So let's do a little check-in on that. First off, what are your thoughts on the Yoichi Budokai? Was it enjoyable? I mean, it's one of 2 self-contained filler arcs in Dragon Ball Z. Obviously, there's filler throughout the entire series, but we picked these 2 out as like these 2 distinct little pieces. How did it feel? Did you enjoy it?
Well, so first off, do not expect me to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Even the Kanzenshuu website still says Afterlife Tournament. I know that we're moving towards the Japanese for the tournament names, and I appreciate that, but I speak with a dubby accent, and regretfully, I don't think I would get the syllables, and I would just offend everybody, and I don't want to do that. Yeah, I mean, the way that I write, as you indicated, is I'm kind of moving sequentially through things, but not only sequentially, but kind of diving in as I go. So I'm here at the end of the Cell Games arc, right before episode 200, and I hit the Afterlife Tournament. And so this is the first time I've watched that since the Toonami days, to be honest with you. It's really old stuff. Probably the first time I've seen it in Japanese. So I got to be careful. It's Paikuhan, not Paikun,
right.
Because I just don't want the flames that I would receive if I say the wrong thing there. You know what? The thing I love about the Afterlife Tournament is that it's so low stakes. And you can say, but Joe, how do you have drama when there's low stakes? And I think there's plenty of drama there. I think it's a fun little distraction from the really, really heavy stuff that came before with the Cell Games arc. I mean, yes, Toriyama's going to be kind of fuzzy for a while, even in the manga as we get into Great Saiyaman and other things. But, they interjected this here, and it was kind of like a little breath of fresh air for a very stressful time in the series. So I kind of like it. It is what it is. It's not high art, but we're sitting here talking about a shonen anime together, and none of it is particularly high art, but it is enjoyable for what it is, which is a kind of a deeply flawed but fun little tournament.
Apparently, if you want to learn more about story thoughts and opinions on the Afterlife Tournament, I'm looking back in the archives here. Podcast episode 233, September 2010, is I guess in the middle of doing the manga review of Awesomeness. We took a break at that point to review the Afterlife Tournament. Who was it? It was myself, Mary, and Jeff actually did that. So if you want to dive back almost 10 years ago, well, there you go. Sometimes I forget that I've been doing this a really long time.
Do you think you really are the same person you were 10 years ago? Do you think maybe your opinions might have changed?
They almost certainly have. I like to... All right, so one of the earlier podcast episodes we did was actually about gender roles in Dragon Ball, and I'm really proud of the fact that we kind of led early on with doing something like that. I'm also really, really petrified to go back and listen to what we might have said so many eons ago on the podcast. But all right, anyway, ignoring that. So go back and listen to that episode for thoughts on the story as a whole there. Joe, what do you want to take me through in terms of your documentation? I'm looking at the page for the Afterlife Tournament that you've been working on. There are cool little notes on character names. And is that character? Who knows? Because they changed colors. What do you want to take me through here?
Well, I mean, there's so much. So the first thing to say is that this arc is kind of fundamentally flawed. I mean, we can say that it wasn't it isn't something that was intended perhaps to be taken seriously, perhaps not digested and chopped up into little bits into a wiki. So as you really start digging in, you kind of realize, wait, this doesn't track. And they said this, but then the rules are different. And it all seems a little bit scattershot once you start kind of digging through. I think, the best place to start with that, right, is really the beginning. And so just for context, right, so this tournament happened over 4 episodes. Yeah, 196 through 199, 96, 97, 98. That's 4, right? So it happened over 4 episodes. But I don't know, the continuity people, I don't know who the continuity people are. Like they weren't really working that day, right? Because you end up having cases where, for example, in episode 196, they sort of run through the first round, and several of the characters that were in that first round, right, are shown to have won, but they didn't advance to the second round. What happened to them? They just don't appear again. It's like, what happened? What did something happen off screen where Daikaio is he seems pretty random with his reading of the rule book later. Maybe he looked at them and said, "Oh, you're out. You accidentally stepped on an earthworm. You've lost." But of course they don't say that, right? And the reality is that they probably weren't intending for us to look that deeply. Perhaps they hadn't come up with the characters of Tolby and Tabika and Frog and Raiko and those characters that would subsequently appear and fight in the next round. The other weird thing about the beginning of this tournament is that they put up a kind of a presentation of here's all the fighters, right? And you're expecting this massive tournament. The diagram that they put up there has 136 contestants. I don't know. But you see that several of the teams are talking to large audiences, right? The rah-rah speech a coach gives just before a big match. And there's, 15, 20 contestants all fighting there, all standing there, being talked up and being told, fight for your side of the galaxy or whatever it is that they do. And then suddenly they move to the announcer and it's like, yep, there's 16 contestants and none of those that appeared there in the background are actually in it. Why did you bother, right? So, was there a preliminary round that they just didn't talk about? Was it written out? Was it edited out? I mean, we can't speculate because all we have is the text in front of us, but it's a little seam that sort of shows through that maybe they had intended to do something and then did something else, or or who knows, we can only speculate. But part of our job is really to document this stuff and to say, like, this is how it seems to have played out, and this is how it happened in each of those episodes, right? It's not for us to draw on the lines that they missed. It is for us to document where those lines are and what happened. So I find that kind of fun and fascinating. The thing is, a lot of those characters, even some of the ones that won in those matches that were somehow magically excised from existence, right? They appear as background characters in various audience reactions and things that'll happen over the subsequent episodes. So it's not like they've completely forgot about them. You know, maybe there's some junior animator over there that's like, oh man, my character got axed. I'm just going to draw them in the background as many times as I can to, maybe they'll be the next to pull. I don't know, but
no, but you're totally right. Like, someone had to design all of these characters, and even if they show up in a color swap an episode later, it's still that design. There's some work that went into it. It may also be the case that I'd have to go back and look at who the studios were in the individual episodes, but maybe the different studios just literally got, here's the character sheets, do whatever you want with them, and no one knew what they were going to animate, on a scene-to-scene basis.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And I think you bring up one of, we'll say, one of the things that I bring to the wiki, or one of the things that I don't bring to the wiki, right? When we talk about what, Terez brings around music, or what Ken does around the dating stuff, or what everyone that speaks Japanese that isn't me does, right? They're all really bringing something, and so somebody probably could understand a lot more about the development process than I do, and then really fill in some of those details. And that's why this is a wiki. That's why this is a collaboration, right? It's, I'm bringing what I can bring to the table, and you're bringing what you can bring to the table. And together, I think we're making something great. But, individually, right, nobody can know everything. And, that's why we're a team.
Agreed.
There is no I in team, but there is an I in wiki, which is very confusing.
There's a couple. Just going to that documentation side of things, what's really unfortunate about this batch of episodes is there's really nothing out there. I mean, there's the design for Paikuhan where Toriyama's like, drums sort of like a Namekian. I forget what the exact quote is, but that's kind of basically all there is for him. And there's really nothing beyond what we can do in things like the Kanzenshuu, where it's just kind of a summary of what's going on. There's not extensive character design sheets. There's no memos about what was going on behind the scenes. So for an arc like this, we really are left to our own devices with just doing a synopsis and looking at things that we can analyze, like the animation studios, and try to piece together those puzzle pieces, so to speak. But without, just like you were saying, it's not our job to then make any assumptions on how that all got put together. We can just say, well, here's all the pieces we got.
Now, this is something that, we talk about on the Wiki channel a lot. And it's, I think, the thing that I think we try to do that differentiates ourselves from certain other Dragon Ball projects that are out there in the world, which is, we're not making up fanon, right? Very, very rarely. And if we do, you are there to shoot us, right? So, we're trying to explain what's there. Sometimes we have to draw some lines that may or may not have been there, or may not be as clear as they otherwise would be. But at the end of the day, we are not trying to build fanon. I am not trying to look at, the Afterlife Tournament in Boo's Fury or something to figure out retrospectively what they might have meant, right? That's not really where we are in this wiki project. And I think it's going to be what differentiates the product that we deliver versus some of the other projects that are out there. At least I hope it does. And because I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. And it's just not necessarily what people might expect if they are used to other sort of Dragon Ball products out there on the web that don't say Kanzenshuu in the name.
All right, so take me through more details, more notes that you've had beyond some of the contestants, the rules maybe seemingly changing from story beat to story beat. What else was fun and interesting here?
Well, I am going to go back 1 second just because there's one character beat that I really just want to get out there because he's my personal pool at the moment. And
okay.
So there is this character, which is this is the green-haired fighter, yellow shirt. We have talked about him before. He doesn't have a name. His name might be Kidomo because we can see in one of the tournament leaderboards, right? We can see that there's a name there. We can't see the name of his opponent. And we don't know whether that's his name or the name of his opponent. In English, his opponent is called Gorilla, but that's a Funimationism, not in the original Japanese. So his opponent has a name in the English dub, but not in the original. I don't know whether that's his name or not, but he's kind of the coolest character in my completely faninish way, because not only does he have this mysterious victory over this other character whose name may or probably isn't Gorilla, not only does he have that victory and then it's taken away from him, replaced with Arqua of all people, right? We don't know how that happened. It doesn't matter. But he's then shown to hang out with the North Kaio team and also train with the East Kaio team. Now, you could say, but Joe, I think that they just couldn't keep track of which Kaio he was supposed to be working for. That's probably true. That's probably the truth of it. For me, I just can't help but imagine this random background character that doesn't have a name, just, socially fraternizes with everyone. He is just a great fighter that wants to hang out with the North Kaio team, hang out with the East Kaio team. Who knows? Maybe he's not even on the East Kaio team. Maybe he just wants to train with them because he's that kind of swell guy. And alas, we shall never know the name of this character. He is long since forgotten. But I just find it cool. And I went through and tracked every time he appeared in the background and tried to find a through line. And guess what? There's no through line. There's no hints. It's just, he just shows up, and I find it fun.
I like the idea that all the Kai are like, is he with us? Did we bring him? I think we brought him. No, he's yours? Wait, no. He just kind of keeps wandering around. Maybe he doesn't even know where he's from.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Possibly true. I mean, the thing about the rest of the tournament, right, is that once you get into the second round, all of these battles are so fast. You barely get a moment to understand like what their techniques are. A lot of them are one note, right? The Toby versus Tabaka fight where you have Tabaka running around the ring, right? And just becomes too exhausted before the fight and immediately gives up. I mean, that's a cute little moment, but it's not what you tune in to Dragon Ball for. Most likely. But although I think they were pretty consistent by saying that the East Kaio team, they're the fast ones. And maybe that's the only, maybe the South Kaio team is they're the peace-loving ones, right? So that's Caterpie and, I'm going to tickle you until you give up, right? That's a pretty good thing, I guess. But who knows, right? Who knows how much thought was actually put into some of these things. The thing that I do like about as we get through this tournament is that there is a little bit more strategy. And that happens a little bit in filler. We didn't talk about it. We don't need to talk about it. But, Plan to Eradicate the Science, which was right about this time. We actually have one strategic battle. We won't say more than one, right? Most of it's crap. But a lot of these battles are fought with strategy. And too often, I think, we have battles in the series that, come down to, keep him busy while I do a Genki Dama or something. And Here we have a great case in the Afterlife Tournament as we get all the way to the end. And it's Goku versus Paikuan, of course. And Goku's having his butt handed to him by techniques over and over again. But Paikuan makes a critical error, which is that he uses the same technique 3 times, right? Had he have just pulled out a different technique, Goku would clearly have lost. But, Goku recognizes the attack and is able to, on the 3rd attempt, right, see the weakness and exploit it, and then the match is over. And like that is just one of those great moments in the series where you come back to this idea that Goku really is a genius fighter, right? He's not just hitting you the hardest, he's hitting you the smartest, at least in my particular worldview. And that's kind of shown here, right? That doesn't happen enough in the series, right? I think it's great whenever it does appear, and kind of showing them doing something that isn't just hitting you harder is always entertaining to me. The other thing I really like that kind of just sells Goku on this arc, because of course there's no stakes here, right? It's not like, oh, you lose this and North Galaxy is going to be wiped out, right? Like you don't need artificial stakes to make a tournament interesting, right? I'm not casting shade. Probably am, but you don't need artificial stakes to make it interesting. A tournament by its nature can be interesting, and Toriyama showed that multiple times over the course of the series. But afterwards, you had a sequence here with Arqua, right? Who was just being chewed out by East Kaio after his loss. And Goku just comes over and, just tells him what a great job he did. And like immediately you have this beautiful big smile up on his opponent's face because he's recognized in that way, in a way that his coach is not recognizing him. So really just a couple beautiful Goku moments in this arc that, maybe throughout the rest of it, but it's Goku being Goku in a really nice way. And I liked it.
So just while you were talking, I was looking at some of the credits for these episodes because some of the things you're describing, they feel really genuine to Toriyama and to Goku in particular. Just that moment, again, where he comes up and congratulates and praises his opponent. I'm like, all right, who wrote this? And it was Aya Matsui. Matsui wrote an enormous amount of material, in particular going into GT. Matsui just really understands these characters. Matsui also worked on we call them the original illustrated stories. The third one there, that is the actual, not long form, but it's not just illustrations, it's mostly text. The Trunks story, worked on that. I feel like Matsui really understands the characters. And now this is one of those, all right, you can work on the synopsis side of things and really have that eye for detail in the episodes. And we have, I don't want to say AJ's literally editing the wiki, but he definitely answers all of our questions anytime we want something. So I'm calling AJ a wiki editor right now, really giving us some of the background and the documentation, in addition to all the credits work that obviously Heath has done over the years. So we can really kind of, again, take these puzzle pieces and really put together, all right, here's how this came together. And as you're describing it, and as I'm looking at the credits, I'm kind of realizing, oh yeah, like this was a good group of folks that put together these episodes, even if they didn't necessarily, down in the animation studio, have the best direction.
Well, I think it's telling that after this arc was over and after they got through to the end of 199 and, they flip over to 200, right? It's a new series. Well, it's the same series, right, but it's a new arc, right? 200, when you see Gohan flying off towards Satan City for the first time, the last episode, what do they call it? The episode recap, right at the beginning of episode 200, completely ignores the entire Afterlife Tournament. Like not even Toei thought that it was important enough to bring up in the following episode. So, maybe there is something to the idea that this isn't so important even to them. But I really did enjoy going through it. I think it's a great little moment in the series, and maybe not the most consequential, but it shows, a couple of good characters, a couple of good fights, a Piccolo clone that, okay, well, what can we say about that? But it is a fun little time, and I'm sorry that it doesn't seem to get all that much love in the guidebooks or perhaps anywhere else.
So, Joe, that was kind of a little tour through the Afterlife Tournament. Obviously, there's a lot more to the page for the tournament itself on the wiki and then the individual episode pages. How about just anything else that you've been working on, plugging away at? I know we've mentioned your references page. Everyone loves that one. Anything else you have a good time doing?
Oh, I have a good time doing everything, to be honest with you. It's for me, I just hit it, and right now I'm trapped in character page hell because there are a lot of characters in this darn arc, and I am committed to getting at least basic character pages done for all of them before I move on to the Boo arc. That is my goal. So as I see them, I add new references, as I add new uses of capsules, because there's a whole bunch of uses of capsules in the anime that I'm still cataloging and things. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell, just for a moment, I'm going to step back again, but I need to tell a Mike story, and that's you.
Oh, geez. Okay. There's a Mike story? I didn't know there was a Mike story. I wasn't prepared.
Well, yeah, it happens. So,
okay.
So a couple of weeks ago, I was working before the Afterlife Tournament, right? I was working on Plan to Eradicate the Science. So we had talked about this, and
yes.
It's fun. It has its own ickiness, right? It's whatever. Talk about it some other day. But while we were digging through, right, really understanding. Okay, so when this was on the Dragon Box, it was given out as like a single chapter with 2 episodes in it. How was it originally distributed? Okay, we're looking on the tidbits page on Kanzenshuu, and okay, it's sometime in August of 93. These VHSs came out. We had no idea. Trying to build the timeline. Did the VHS come out before the Famicom game? Did the Famicom game come out first? I mean, that would make the most sense, right? Because this is a so-called strategy guide for the Famicom game, although honestly, I don't know how useful it would be as a strategy guide. Having actually read a strategy guide to the game, it doesn't seem that connected, honestly. But here we were trying to track down this. Kanzenshuu, the website, didn't know the answers to some of these questions. And somehow, in that giant basement of yours, you pull out, oh, by the way, I have a scan of the original advertisement that contained all of the original release dates for the VHSs, right? So you didn't have it, but you had it. And I think
that's a story of my life, man.
I just think it's just so impressive, the resources that we can bring to bear, that you can dig through some random filing cabinet and find, oh, here's the original advertisement for a VHS that nobody cares about. And I was pretty impressed. So I wanted to share this Mike story. You know, you can trim this out if you like, but for me, this is fundamental to what we are doing here on the wiki, which is trying to take all of this stuff that is out there and catalog it and do our best with it. And frankly, there's more of it than we will ever get through in any of our lifetimes. But it is, it's great fun when you can be working on a problem like that and have somebody that just says, oh, look, I found the original ad. So that made my day. I needed to sort of share it with the world. And I hope that eventually, when those pages come out, you know, that kind of love shows up. We have this nice little timeline page that I'm building for that. It's going to be very boring because nobody cares about Plan to Eradicate the Science. But
I care so much. I have a Playdia that won't turn on anymore.
Well, I'll know that it was done with love. Yeah. But it's a funny little thing, but it was fun.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining me, giving us a little tour through some of the things you're working on. I always ask this at the end, and I never prep people for it. But what's something that someone else has been working on that you found either cute, amusing, fun, informative?
Oh, you know, that is such a difficult question, because I go through here and I look at the recent changes page every day, and I'm like constantly rooting through and seeing, okay, what are my friends and peers doing? So to call out like a single thing is really, really tough. But I will say that so much is not just the stuff that appears on the wiki, but it's you know, the answers in the various Discord channels and other places where it's like, oh, I need this translated, and what does this say? Like, that is, to me, I mean, that's such a difference. As for the pages themselves, I mean, I remain completely in love with the timeline work that Ken does and the music that Terez does. I am gonna so piss off Ken because I'm working on this thing where I'm trying to track the Dr. Slump, the corollaries from the Dr. Slump dates to the Dragon Ball dates, which are pretty consistent up through kind of the end of Z, but then you get Dr. Slump Returns, but only for a little while. Then you get the later Dr. Slump anime, and both of which have crossovers with Dragon Ball. And guess what? Those dates don't line up. And one of these days, I'm just going to drop on him this whole Dr. Slump date thing. But no, he does some really good work. Like, there's just so much detail work. I came to him and I said, hey, I think you had something wrong. And he looked at me and said, no, actually the subtitles, the Simmons subtitles actually translated that date wrong. My guide is correct. And I'm like, oh, curses foiled again. So there's so much fun stuff. And I just love that level of detail, especially as you look at those pages and you realize that we care more about that level of detail than some others. Like, just seeing the crying that happens as people try to work out the Broly timeline versus the Dragon Ball Minus timeline versus, it's some really great stuff. And Ken is doing a great job of documenting that.
Those are all great answers. All right. I don't know what this podcast episode looks like. I'm going to try to get some more folks in here. So maybe someone that you just mentioned will be appearing either before or after you. So props to them. Joe, thank you again so much. Thank you for, joining me on the podcast, working on stuff. I mean, you're just a pleasure, man.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be invited. Please invite me again. And I got 6 more. No, 7 more until I can, chop up that card and get my free whatever it was that I'm going to get. So talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Adios.
Heath, I ask everyone this, and I think you're like me, you probably keep up that recent changes page and just refresh it and just watch and just love.
That is the best part. I just enjoy watching sometimes. I mean, as creepy as that sounds.
What is something cool, interesting, different that someone else has worked on that you found really cool?
Well, most recently, it was when Terez hopped on and said, hey, I'm doing all this Shinsuke Kikuchi score documentation. We even went through, okay, yeah, here's some of the files we have. And as she was deep diving into some of it, she's like, oh, well, this is actually wrong. It's actually this track. And so it's been really neat to see the back and forth and just how she's been putting that all together. Because I think when I went through and I did the DBZ movie 7 page.
Yes.
That's when I even started to do my own deep dive into the musical score. And I learned way more than, I thought I already knew a lot about it. And then I learned, no, I did not. And there was a lot more to learn, a lot more to document. And I think a lot of us have kind of jumped on that ship a little bit. And I think it'll be really interesting. Yeah.
It's a good answer. I guess I want to share a couple things that I've been working on. I always have like one little pet project that takes up way more time than it should, and I do way more work on than any otherwise reasonable person should. And for me,
it sounds totally normal.
That has been the Planet Frieza number 79 page. You think, all right, it's there for like a couple panels in the manga. It's there in reference a couple times in the TV series. What can there possibly be about this? Well, let me tell you, dear listener, just how much there is about Planet Frieza number 79. I'm going through the Daizenshu and the Chozenshu, pulling out, are there any character profiles? Then you realize that the Cardass cards had entirely different names for some of the characters, so you want to put all those in, and you're like, okay, it says they're playing that game there when right before Vegeta first arrives. And that's documented in the Daizenshu. But then Helmet 2 is referenced in a different place, and it's not actually referenced under Planet Frieza number 79, but the screenshot they show from its first appearance is that. So, you want to throw that on there. And then you start going down like, well, I got to make the page for the medical machine as well, because this is where we first see it there. And then I'm like, well, I should go through video games. So like, when is Planet Frieza number 79 shown in video games? Like, okay, well, I guess I'm starting on the Famicom and working my way forward through like what covers the Frieza arc, what is in there. So going all the way from the Violent God Frieza, Dragon Ball Z2 on the Famicom. All right. What else is there? Does it just go straight to Budokai 1? No, actually, it's Idainaru Son Goku Densetsu on the PC Engine. It's shown there. I want to make sure I get a screenshot of that. I'm like, oh yeah, I think there's a what if in is it Buku Togeki Supersonic Warriors 1? That's good. Oh right, it's there in Fusions as well. It's like melded in with things. And then the real doozy. I'm looking through YouTube videos trying to find, like, is it referenced anywhere else? And I'm not taking screenshots from the YouTube videos because we're doing all of our own original, capturing and all that kind of stuff. And I realized Planet Frieza number 79 is shown in Harukanaru Goku Densetsu on the Nintendo DS, a game that I bought twice and played for about an hour in each language. I did not get far enough. I have to give incredible props to Wiki Assistant, let's say, Roll, who put 4 hours into that game just to get to that part, to get me a proper native res screenshot of Planet Frieza number 79. Just be a little thing in a table on a wiki page. I am incredibly appreciative of that. So, you scroll through and it's so good. It's like we got the Daizenshu, we got Dragon Ball SD. Terez helped me figure out where that was. All the video games. Like, who cares? I care.
I'm sure somebody at some point will care. But the lengths and the above and beyond attitude is just so refreshing. I guess my other shout out would be to Sodhi.
Oh, yeah.
The animation documentation that I'm assuming it's a he, because everyone on the internet is until Terez tells me otherwise, that it has just been phenomenal. I know he's been going through referencing a lot of what we have, but he's been going even beyond that and finding a lot of photos of the animators, background histories that we haven't even gone into yet on the main website, and going over to Sakuga Borough and just deep diving into clips that we can throw in there and have as references of in-between animation, key animation from these animators, then going into positions and roles and any biographical information we can find. And it's just, it's been a dream come true. So props to him for doing all that. I've enjoyed watching that as well.
So just one of the most recent pages. It's a name that you will know, Naohiro Shintani. So you go to the Shintani page, and we're going to have the biography and all that stuff and, everything that he's done on Dragon Ball. But then the other things that Soti here is going to great lengths to do is saying, all right, what else has this person worked on? Toriko,
yes.
One Piece, Film Z, Pretty Cure, just a list of the episodes and the other works that someone has worked on. So you can see just what their career extends to. Obviously, we're not going to cover their animation in One Piece with any real depth or anything like that. But the fact that we can note that, I think that gives a greater understanding and appreciation to just who these people actually are, beyond Dragon Ball. That's really important.
Yeah. And especially nowadays, it's a lot easier to track animators because they actually credit everyone.
Right.
Back in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, there are so many uncredited animators that would be featured. And the only way you would know is you would recognize their style. Something would tip you off. Oh, yeah, that's a Sheeta shot right there. And he wasn't credited at all. So nowadays it is nice. You can at least go back to One Piece, Toriko, and say, oh, yeah, this person's right there. Second key animator for something. And I enjoy it from the perspective also of you can see kind of their career path as they go from they started as a second key animator over here or an in-between animator, and by the time they got to work on Dragon Ball Super, now they're an animation supervisor or an assistant animation supervisor, something of a more significant role. So you can kind of see the progression, especially through Toei Animation. So it's that background, which is kind of nice of, hey, where did this guy even come from? Because he's damn good and I want to go see some of his other work.
Yeah. Love it. I'm just scrolling through, recent changes and even my own page. I'm like, oh, right. I totally forgot I worked on some of this stuff. Like the reason I even went to Planet Frieza number 79 is because I was working on planets. I was going through the Dragon Ball Super manga and pulling out planet names in there and figuring out name puns that were kind of obfuscated in Viz's release of the manga, where they either went with just like a direct romanization or missed, one of the three in a collective of puns. Really wanted to get that all noted.
That was always the rabbit hole I would find myself in.
Yeah.
When I was doing more wiki work, is you'd start on a page and you want to list something. You're like, that page doesn't exist yet. Well, I'll kind of get started on that so it's at least there. And next thing you know, it's like 2 weeks later and you're like, what was the original page I was working
2 weeks later, I've played every Dragon Ball game to get a screenshot of Planet Frieza number 79.
Yep.
That's totally what it was. It was like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, it's a perpetual problem that we typically would run into, even before the wiki, when we were doing just regular site work. That's why so many projects would sit in limbo forever, because I would literally forget that I started that page. There have been times that I have found a page on the main website, like, I do not remember making this page.
And it wasn't me. I know it was you.
And you look back at the history, and it was like 5 years ago I started. I was like, holy shit. Well, so yeah, those are always the nice finds. But back to the wiki, yes, you started on all the planets pages. Well, you like the main page for it. And that's how you end up doing your deep dive.
And then it's like, well, I want to find planets from, I was thinking of things like Gia, where they would mention one planet. It was Planet Kaino. I'm like, I'm going to mention that, do the page for that, and, do all the puns and everything. Well, then I end up doing the entire page for Gia itself. And then I end up doing the entire page for Kajika itself. Like, well, why not? Oh, all right. So
somebody's got to do it.
That's some of the stuff that I've been doing on the wiki, and we've noticed other people working on. I want to talk about stuff on the website proper. Some of the things that we've posted recently. Sure. Just cool little things here and there. New content, new translations, those kinds of things. This was just something I decided to do on Twitter because I noticed it was the anniversary of Ultraman, and Ultraman is baked into the DNA of Toriyama. So it certainly wasn't every example. And in fact, I went back to the crappy manga laboratory and I found it's just Ultraman himself just on the page. Like, it's not even a reference. It's just Toriyama draws Ultraman. So I got to throw that into the mix in that thread as well, I think. But it's just a Twitter thread going through a few examples, tracing it back from in Dr. Slump into was it Dragon Boy, then into Dragon Ball, a few examples there as well, whether it's just the pose or the schwatch, something like that, or the fish head. Just cool little references. So I plop that up on the homepage of the site. And then, of course, we are doing Toyotaro's monthly Toyotaro Drew It. Julian translates that every month when they come out. We typically have that up. Sometimes it feels like within minutes of it going up. The last one they put up was pretty late in Japan, so it was a couple hours later by the time we got to it. But it's typically day and date that we put them up. The most recent one was Raditz. I think Ken pointed this out, that this is probably one of the best that Toyotaro has drew lately. There's just something about it, and Ken thought maybe it was because he had an actual manga panel to reference from Toriyama. I say that I think Toyotaro's is better than Toriyama's original there. I don't know. Raditz feels kind of squat there in the original version there from chapter 201. I don't know. Good job, Toyo.
It's hard to say because when Toriyama made the transition after the time skip, after chapter 194 into 195, you can really start to see, and he talks about it in interviews, his artistic style change.
Yeah, it's adapting
to a more, and it seems like what Toyotaro has done is hit more of the later Z type of style, because even Goku in those early, what you would consider Dragon Ball Z chapters, he's very squatty and almost kind of pudgy, like round looking, and he gets much more angular as things go on. So I don't know if that's kind of a trickery kind of playing on your mind.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, that looks way more like later Dragon Ball Z. And then when you compare it to early Dragon Ball Z, they're totally different.
It's one of the things, like when you think about old video games and the way you think about them is actually what the remasters look like. And then you go back to the original. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. I kind of feel like Toyotaro did a modern Toriyama remaster of Raditz here as opposed to the original. But anyway, I mean, he just had a couple of quick comments about Raditz there. But I guess you could say the big Toyotaro thing for the month was, this is unfortunately one of those things where people plop up the image, don't give any context for it whatsoever. This was not Toyotaro's regular entry for Toyotaro Drew It this month. And he's not making up a story about, I mean, he gave a little, this is what I envisioned it could be as he drew it, but it's an image of Bardock and Goku. This image is being turned into prizes for a crane game in Japan later this year in Japan. But alongside it, they gave a real brief interview. Cypher, Ian, was actually the one who translated this. So many thanks and appreciation to him for that. You can just go read the whole thing. They're on the site. I don't know if there's a whole lot to say about it other than that certainly is Toyotaro. It just, going for those references and overthinking, like, well, I took this Bardock, but I put it in this way for this reason with this item for that reason. Like, Yep, I see where you're going, man.
I can say it is certainly not my favorite. And I will leave it at that.
One little interesting thing related to that I noticed this month was V-Jump had a 2-page spread of I would say all, except the Raditz one that had just come out. All of the Toyotaro Drew It. All the little thumbnail versions, because they spread it across the 2 pages. But they're all in there. So that was neat that, I guess they were looking for for another 2 pages of filler in the magazine this month. So they gave Toyotaro a little bit else there. So that was good to see there.
We tweeted that out, I believe.
Yep. I took a little photo. A little overhead photo of the magazine as it came out, doing a budget Mike style, but there you go. I mean, we already have all the content. I saved the master versions and pings and I crop them to.
They're just going to save up until the very, whenever this is all done, and let's release a 50-page book.
You know what?
Or however
That's
far
not too
we
bad.
are.
I don't know that their earlier ones that they have. I mean, maybe Toyotaro has the master versions of them, but
Well, and the first ones he did were on paper with marker.
mm-hmm.
I mean, clearly.
Yeah, you can
and then
see the page
I think
texture.
he got like 5 to 7 in somewhere in there, and he started to go digital. Like, he's like, oh, we're going to actually make this a thing.
This is the thing now. And that was also around the time that the Dragon Ball official site started using slightly higher quality images for things.
Thank the
As
Lord.
opposed to the 200 pixel GIF files.
Even their JPEGs, though, were so pixelated.
They're really bad. It's like 20%
Yeah.
quality. That's about it. For content things right now, it's kind of slow-ish in the world of Dragon Ball. I think I saw today that they just announced the next Heroes promo anime episode is going to be coming out. Is it later this week? It hadn't had a date up until this point, so things are really on the back burner there. We have volume 13 of the Dragon Ball Super manga hitting in Japan next week. I haven't seen Toyotaro say anything about any bonus materials, like a bonus chapter, an interview, or anything. Volumes 10 and 12 had the 2-page bonus chapters. 10 had the Cranberry chapter, and 12 had the Frieza chapter. I say chapter, just 2 pages. So I'm guessing that volume 13 is going to just be the 4 chapters beginning to end, and that's it. Haven't seen anything about extra pages or anything there. And then today I just saw that Viz has a date out for volume 12 of the Super manga. That's not until next March. So we actually have volume, 10 coming out in September, volume 11 in December, and then that gives us into March for volume 12. And again, it's just a collected edition mirroring Japan. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit. I always see people ask, why is Viz so far behind? Like, why are we only getting to volume 10 when Japan has volume 13 coming out? And I think I have a fairly good stock answer. So let me walk you through this, Heath, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff.
All right. Oh, I will.
I'm sure you will. I feel like one of the main reasons is that, well, Japan is a geographically smaller country. America is a very geographically large country. The way that things are shipped and packaged and delivered is very, very different in a country like this as opposed to Japan. So you got to get all of your logistics, ducks in a row there. That's a factor. Another factor, I don't know if people realize this. It's one of those things that as you're reading, your mind just kind of like slides past it. Viz redraws all of these sound effects on the page into English in their English translation. The simul publication of the monthly chapters, they don't do that. They do a little asterisk thing on it,
sound effects
like thwap or something like that. That gets completely redrawn. This is a thing Viz has always done. They redraw those sound effects for the collected edition, the print and the digital collected edition release. That takes a significant amount of time. I mean, think about Toriyama. One of the things that really grabbed Torishima looking at Toriyama stuff was his sound effects, specifically in English, just the way they popped out of the page. And so think about how much that Toyotaro is trying to evoke that at times. So there's a lot of work that goes into doing that. I don't know if other countries do something like that, but Viz does that, and that takes time. They do another pass on the translation. You'll notice that there are some wording, phrasing differences between the simulpub chapters and when it gets to the final release. Some of that is, well, they didn't know what they didn't know at the time of like when chapter 1 came out versus when chapter 60 came out. So they can make some adjustments in there as need be. And another significant factor is, well, they started the print edition much later than Japan did. So obviously they have to catch up in that regard. I feel like you add all those up, and that kind of explains why Viz is only at volume 10 when Shueisha's at 13. Also, Shueisha, they've really caught up too. I mean, we are at the point where every 4 chapters that are done and in the can, they're pretty much rolling right behind it with that next collected release. This is the most aggressive and on track I've ever seen them with Super.
And it's really weird. I mean, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just not what we are used to, I guess would be the best way to put it. And you also, within the United States or North America in general, just the volume that you have to print is much greater.
True. Yeah.
So that also takes time.
I feel like another reason why I was a little slow to get going there was super chapters were also only like 15 pages when they started. So that, we had to build up a lot of months in between before a volume could be ready. Now that chapters are 45 pages, that's only 4 chapters per volume. So like they are pretty ready on a quarterly basis to pump out a new volume.
Which I think they like it that way. And
Probably.
I like that it is just a fixed page number. And they're basically just hit this, every month and we're good.
Yeah.
And then we know they can plan ahead on how many volumes they're going to release in a year. As long as it keeps going, it should just remain consistent. And it's one less thing that you, as a publishing company, have to worry about. If you know you can always plan for it and you're always ready, then that's less hassle that you have to do. And it makes promotion pretty easy. So I get it. I kind of like it, actually. Except it sucks for our year-end predictions because now that takes away one of my predictions every year. Astronomical guesses at how many volumes there are going to be.
Excuse me, sir. What predictions?
I don't know.
What episode was that? What happened there?
I'm talking about 2018. Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let the record show that I'm being a dick to you right now about this.
Oh, I know. I know you are.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Not just you. Certain other unnamed Kanzenshuu member?
No.
Right. Anyway, Heath, I want to talk to you about website and wiki stuff. Again, we've talked last time you were on, like you I don't want to say you're backseat operating the wiki, but you are. Anytime someone needs a tech thing or any kind of fix, or did Mike break something entirely, you're certainly always there to do that. But you have turned your attention over to the website proper for a lot of stuff lately in particular. What do you want to mention or talk about right now?
Well, I want to mention it all, but you got to keep something in your back pocket.
Sure.
Especially, I don't want to set the expectations, but yeah, so for a long time I had been really going into the wiki, mostly, I would say partly into 2019. And then since then, we've redone the translations archive. I'm currently, lo and behold, working on redoing the press archive.
Yes.
Which I think you were very excited about.
I am.
Funny story. I believe I started working on this 6 or 7 months ago, and I sent you a link and was like, "Hey, check this out. Let me know what you think before I just plow ahead." And you're like, "Okay, I'll take a look." And that was the last time I think we talked about it, except for this past week.
I'm sure I said, "Great, let's go," or maybe I didn't.
I don't know. So we're working on that. It's not going to blow your socks off because it's pretty much going to be exactly like the translations archive. But
just being able to filter and all that jazz.
Yeah, it's still a lot of back end stuff that needs to get programmed in. So we're getting that taken care of, which will be really nice. I think it'll be a lot easier for us to keep adding things, and by us I mean you.
You know what? I need a full-time, unpaid intern to come live in my basement and recatalog all of the magazines. I actually had to take down half of a bookshelf because it had collapsed onto all of the Animericas. So now I have a pile of video game magazines on the floor. I have lost track. I had a spreadsheet at one point, but then I just kept buying things. And I don't know why I have what I have, for what reason. I'm sure. I don't know. Please send help.
So then on the other front, now that the animation production guide was launched, my next venture of basically redoing the entire website, which has driven me absolutely insane. But that is what I'm currently working on. I basically blew up everything we had and am starting from scratch. I will say it's very similar to what we have, but from both a front end and back end standpoint, it is very different. It will feel different. And this is largely so that we can finally have a responsive layout. Because if people don't know, you and I have been doing this since the mid-90s, or at least I've been doing website programming. Things were very different back then. Things were very static. Things were very fixed width. And that's what you had. We had computers with maximum resolutions of 800 by 600. And so a lot of our content that we have that's from the late 90s, early 2000s is or has been done in a way to accommodate a certain width screen, and there's only been so much we can do with that, and a lot of our functionality has always been very limited. Well, the best way to do that is to go back and just gut everything and start all over, and that's kind of what I've been doing. So, and I've been sending you updates every once in a while of, what do you think of this? And you're like, start over. It's crap.
No,
so,
I've never said that. Don't believe him.
So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm kind of doing this in a way as our, I don't know, Kanzenshuu 3.0, whatever.
Yep.
And I don't want to say it's like a relaunch, but it's been very challenging with certain aspects that are programmed in a way to be fixed with, such as like episode credits, and things like that rely heavily on if things move too much, things will break. So finding workarounds with that has been very fun. But I'm very excited. I just want it to be done. I don't know.
I hear you. I know what that's like when you get into a project.
And I'm taking a lot of aspects of the current website that I like, that I know people have mentioned to us that they like, and I'm reincorporating those back into it. So we're not deviating. We're not going to go from the way it looks now to, like, wow, this is drastically different. I don't know where anything is, because I know from a user standpoint, if I move too much all over the place, people just naturally don't like it. I don't like it. So everything will be relatively similar, but not.
I mean, that's a valid critique of the website, just because of how much it's grown over the years and what's there. Discoverability is a problem. And Terez and I talked about this a little bit. Like, if you don't know enough about what you're looking for, you have no idea where to even begin. So I think some of the navigation changes are going to address that, give us some options to highlight things.
I'll say that when I first started doing this redesign, I did the banner first, kind of got, the header area done. And then it was the navigation. The top navigation was the first thing I did. And I sunk months into it of just trial and error, what I wanted to see worked. And then I would use it for a little while to just navigate around. And if I didn't like it, then I would change it. And I think what I have now is probably what we're going to end up with. I might tweak it here and there, but it's very much more functional. I think it works more to what we do. And the technology, when I did this in 2012, a lot of this wasn't possible. HTML5, CSS3 weren't a thing. And so there's a lot more power behind what we can do, which is really nice, because it sets up a lot of things that I think you and I have always wanted to do with the navigation. Because when we first launched the website, what we knew was, hey, there's a static sidebar on the side with every single page just listed out. And that's how it was through the 90s. That's what every web page was like. Every fan site more or less had the same navigation sidebar. And our conversation was, how can we do that differently? Because I don't want to overwhelm everybody. That's the first thing you see. And it's long. It's daunting. And we had to come up with a way of, well, how can we not overwhelm it, but kind of create subsections and have a pop-down menu, and that's what we came up with. This, what I'm doing now, I think, is even further beyond that of functionality and making it easier to find things, find what you're looking for in as few clicks as possible.
I'm just looking at dates and thinking, as we were working to launch Kanzenshuu, we launched it in April 2012. So we were working for a year or two before that. That was the iPhone 4 is what was out. So
yeah,
I mean, the concerns like that, it wasn't even really a concern at the time. And people always ask, are you going to make an app? And we're not going to make an app. We're not app developers. We don't have time to add on to that. What would the app even be?
No.
I mean, just go to the website. But I mean, our concerns were really about desktop computers at the time, and that we do have to account for phones now. We do.
Yeah, and I think at most I had accounted for say a tablet or an iPad, and those still had fairly higher resolution, so it wasn't that big of a concern. And things have just changed so much that at this point it is something that I've put a Band-Aid on it to kind of make the main website functional on a phone. Not near what I should do, but I did the best I could under our circumstances. And we are finally at that point now that we just need to do it. And it needs to work. It needs to be functional. And Julian has been helping me with fonts and readability. And that has been awesome. I will say I picked out all the fonts, and he's like, yes, let's do this. So we're having a mixture of sans serif. We're having serif, pulling in different Japanese, Korean fonts, things like that hopefully we can cover the gamut with everything, so everything looks nice. I don't know how many people realize how many fonts we currently import. We're going up a little bit, but I think it makes the functionality that much better. They're all Google fonts anyway, so we don't host anything, which is nice. And then I guess my biggest thing is I'd love to give a shout out to my buddy Randy, who I've been working with, and I think we have a final design now that we're going with. I have it. Mike, you have not seen it.
I have not. I've heard the wonders of it.
Yes. I wanted to do a whole new banner. The logo will stay the same, but we've had the same thing forever. We've swapped out Toriyama artwork on the side, but we've had the Shenlong in the background, and you and I have always discussed, let's have something that's uniquely us, but is still Dragon Ball. And so I talked to my buddy Randy, and he commissions artwork all the time, and I said, let's pitch some ideas, and he threw me a couple sketches, which were fantastic, different poses, and this is what we came up with, and I absolutely love it. So I hope everybody else does, but it's something to look forward to at least. It's a nice refresh, I will say. So
Kanzenshuu Kai coming 2020.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm excited. I've been hesitant to post anything about it, even on Twitter. So maybe coming up soon, I can start throwing some random things up that probably won't show you a whole lot.
All right.
Maybe leave you wanting a little more. I don't know.
That's the way to do it. Always leave them wanting more.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then I think when we launch that, we'll have things that we've talked about before, some other exciting announcements that will go along with that.
Yes, please.
Our plan is to try to group a lot of things together.
I would
all
like
at
to.
Once, and
that makes sense. I just want to know, I talk about this with regard to myself, but with regard to everyone, all the things you just heard, you just do because you love it. Kanzenshuu is not a job for anyone. There is no income. We have no money. This is just the oldest of old school DIY fan sites still here in 2020. The amount of time that you sink into just making things work and guaranteeing that things work, and when I break them, that you fix them is. Mm-hmm. I just want to say how much I appreciate that, and no one needs to do anything like that. And the fact that you're still here, it says a lot to me, and I think it says a lot to everyone else.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I hope it shows, because I think we do really enjoy what we do. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't still be here. Hopefully, we're here for a lot longer. At least I'm planning on it.
Me too. I don't know. Have you stepped outside lately? Try not to.
Unfortunately, I don't get much farther past my driveway than I have to.
That all being said, www.kanzenshuu.com. It is Kanzenshuu. It is not Kanzenshuu. It is not Kanzenshuu. It is not Kaizenshuu. It is Kanzenshuu. Just think of it, those three kanji, Kanzenshuu. And you got it. So that has been Heath. My name is Mike. Thank you to all the folks that joined us. Terez, Jay, Joe, talking at you earlier. I know this is a doozy of a podcast. I actually like that. I think that's perfect and what we need right now. I know even for myself, because I don't have a commute right now, because I'm working from home, my podcast listening has been down significantly. So I actually don't know. I never look at stats. I have not looked at stats in probably 10 years. I don't know if anyone's listening to the show right now. I hope they are. and if you are, thank you. Thank you so much. We're always going to be here, always coming back at you. That's the site. Those are the people. That is it. We'll see you next time. Bye.